Hey, what's up? I was looking through some comments on the channel, and somebody had pointed out that the last time I did this video was several versions ago, and I figured this one needed an update. So this is highs and lows, which the purpose of this is to just chart out a couple of technical analysis levels that are going to be reactive, that are going to be fairly important for trading. And it's kind of a kitchen sink collection of a bunch of different things. When you go into the study, you can see that there's just a ton. This is streamlined. I've just cleaned this up. There used to be a lot more options. Like, for example, show yesterday's high, show yesterday's close, show yesterday's, and now it's just, yesterday's open, high, low, and close are all one thing. Opening range is one thing. So if you want opening range, it's really easy to just turn it on or off. But if you only want like pre-market, then it's easy to just turn that on or off. So some of the features about this, let's add the labels in so you can see what this is. Right now, the default is the min label, which is just ATR and the daily percent. And this will give you an idea of the, as long as your chart's big enough to support it, this will show you the range that you're in and what percentage of today's movement is encompassed by that range. And this is an absolute, so it's not based on the previous close or anything. This is just, has it moved at least this much between high and low, or for the true range. And then the daily percent is from yesterday's close. How far has it moved? What's the movement? So that's the minimum label set, and if you turn that off, then it's independent from the rest of the labels. And actually, I'm just going to turn on all the bells and whistles here, just so that you can see. Well, alerts won't do anything right now. So let's apply this and then take a look at what is different. So now what we're seeing is all of these labels up at the top here, which can be cryptic. They all have meaning though. There's after hours high, after hours low, pre-market high, pre-market low, yesterday's high, yesterday's open, close, low, last week's high. So they're all just acronyms. I mean, and the other new thing is I've added these bubbles that will match the end of whatever line they're pointing to. So you can add bubbles which will be the key for what all of these levels actually are. So that you can see, this is YH, yesterday's high, and then you can see the price that line is at. So this kind of obviates the need for these labels at the top, but different people may want different ways of looking at the same information. And these will all carry through whatever the colors were of that you had picked in the study itself. So if you go in here and change those down in globals, that'll get reflected in all of these so that it's consistent. So the levels are more or less the same from the last time I did the video, with the addition of the average true range stuff, which is fairly new. The other thing is I'm not sure that I allowed as much of an opening range. I don't remember what it was, but I'll walk through each one of these and why I think they're important to have in here. I mean, I trade with all of these all the time. And then the weekly ones, last week's high, last week's low. So if it ever does drop pretty far, like that's the weekly levels are going to be pretty far out there. And where it makes sense, I've added in mid candles, and that's this sort of lighter bluish, where like this is the last week's mid candle. So this is the diff between last week's high and last week's low. So that's the midpoint, which I think, I'm not even sure where last week's high is on this. Oh, it's right in the middle here. Yeah. So there's the high, low, mid candle. So opening range, high, low, mid candle. So where it makes sense, I've been adding in those just to have it there. But a couple of the things, like opening range has actual 161 fibs, because often that is a level that gets respected. Like with this movement, it actually got respected here, which is pretty useful. But it's just something else to look out for. So the bubbles are new. It's sort of a legend so that you can translate between what the level is and what it means. And then it just makes it clearer, but you can turn all of that stuff on and off. So just going through these things. So the labels we've seen, those are up at the top. The min label is gonna just be, I like to have the ATR and the daily percent on the chart just so I can kind of get an overall gauge for what's going on. These labels, when they show, they are they will show up red if it's the price action is below that, and green if it's above it. So you can kind of get an overall sense of how the day looks by seeing where we are in relation to those things. Opening range is pretty important, and you need to have, obviously, if you pick a 30-minute opening range, which is the default, you need to have a chart that's larger than 30 minutes for this to show up. Otherwise it'll give you an error. And you can pick whatever you want for the opening range. Some people use 15 minutes, some people use 5-10 minutes. They just want to see the first candle, but 30 minutes is a pretty solid range for it to establish a high and a low, and then interact with that higher and a low. And that's like, all of these levels are ones that I trade off of. So when price reaches one, I'm looking for it to either crash through and retest it and keep going, or pivot off of it. So I'll play a short if I think it's going to pivot off, like if price has moved far enough that kind of, it feels like it needs a place to turn. Often these will be the levels it turns. And the opening range, like some of the other things, this has a middle. So when the opening range on this is these dots, that's OR, ORL, OR high, and then it's got a mid candle, and you can see this mid candle being respected still later in the day, which is, that's it. We're looking for levels that have interaction, because that's where price is going to look to turn if that's where sentiment turns. I mean, it's never perfect, but it definitely gives you something to look out for. And that 50% mark I often use as a bellwether between a high and a low. This was a really short range day, but it tells me whether price action right now is bullish or bearish based on whether it's above or below that mid candle line. That's why I plot those, so that you can kind of get an overall look for where we're at. And that's true of the weekly stuff too. Like this price pumped up above last week's high and then couldn't regain it. This is on a bigger level. This is why that's important. And if price were to drop far enough, all the way down here, here's the mid candle of the between last week's high and low, because the low is really far down. And I may look for it to turn somewhere before here if it's, if the bigger picture is not one that is just going to keep crashing through. Then if price does make it down here, this might be a level that you would want to take a look at. So let's go back into the settings and take a look at a couple more. The only show below, this is for when you don't want your highs and lows to show up on something higher, on a higher chart. So this, for me, usually I'll set this to like a 30-minute chart, and that's 1 hour. So it's only show below 1 hour, which the next one down is 30 minutes. So that's the one that'll show. And that's just to keep this cleaner for, like, I don't necessarily want it showing up if I switch to a daily chart here. So that's what this lets us do, is show and hide this. It's possible that you may want different highs and lows to show up on higher range charts too. So, you could do an only above 1 hour, and then put two of these highs and lows on there and show different things for them. However you want to make it work. We saw the show bubbles. Show bubbles turns these things on, which I think is a pretty cool addition. Make lines shorter is an old, this was in the original, and that's just to cap the lines at a certain distance, because, and in this case it's 40 bars, but you can make it whatever you want, and then offset it. The offset is, that's how far away from the price action it'll start. So it pushes it back by or out by 5 bars, and then it's 20 bars or whatever it is that you pick, and that's just so that you can kind of control where this shorter line will show up. Both of those things are ignored if you pick the full, but I never do, because part of why I like this is that it's really contained just where the price action is, because I don't really want to see these lines stretching all out across the chart. Normally my charts aren't this clean. I've got a bunch of studies that I run, and so I need to be able to distinguish all of the visual noise. So I like to make the lines shorter. but your mileage may vary. This is really new. Someone in the YouTube comments suggested alerts, and so if you turn these on, they will alert through whichever, if as soon as price action crosses through on that bar, you will hear an alert pop up, and it should show a message as well, so you can track your messages. So if it gets to a point where it's crashing through these things, you can have this on one chart and not necessarily be looking at it, and just have it alert when it breaks through a level, so that you know that that's something to be paying attention to. And after that, we get down into here's all of the actual studies that you can show. We've got pre-market high and low. We've got after hours high and low. So pre-market would be this morning, and after hours would be last night. Opening range is, again, this is the 30 minutes, and actually this should be the opening range length. I should probably move this down. It probably will be moved down by the time you see this. The opening, so this will show it. If your opening range length is at a half an hour or whatever, it'll use that opening range. Otherwise, it won't show the opening range if this isn't on. Today's levels are going to be high, low, and open. Yesterday's would be all four: high, low, open, close, and that's to give you a sense of like yesterday's high and low are often really well respected. This was it definitely, there was some interaction there for sure. But it didn't end up being a pivotal level today. Pre-market high and low is often very reactive, so that's one of those things that I like to make sure I have on every chart. Well, not every chart, but at least on my main chart. Show last week is last week's high, low, and 50% mark, and that's these kind of bigger bars, brighter bars, and that's just if you need to have last week on the chart range. So this is a 5-day range, so this actually may not be showing the right data, and that's something you got to watch out for, is to make sure that your chart range is big enough. So let's just make sure that let's get this up to 15 days, and then we'll see how those ranges change, because I guess that was enough data for the high. The low has gotten lower though, so that's why you want to make sure you have enough of a chart range, because these values will just be wrong if last week's high and low weren't something that you have enough range for. So just make sure you have enough chart range for the last week's high and low, and then there's also this week's high and low and mid candle, which that one you need to make sure it's a little less time, but you need to make sure you have at least the last 5 days worth on your chart range. ATR and ADR are two similar but slightly different things. ATR is average true range, and there's a calculation to figure out the true range of a candle, which takes into account its high, low, open, and close to derive a size for the candle that you can then use in EMA. And that's what we're looking at here is this ATR. It'll give you a size in dollars, and then it'll give you the percentage that we've traveled today on that ATR, and then in dollars as well as percent. So that true range, I have ADR shut off here. ADR is just the daily range, which is just high to low. So it's going to be the whole the candle encompassing it. And generally these values tend to be pretty similar, but it all depends on how how the price action works and what it looks like. The way these are showing, the way they should show, is that it will take whatever the current, because what we want to know is the full distance of travel. And so once you have a low marked out for the day, it'll draw the ATR low, and then from that it'll calculate the next one up. The high is going to be, if we make it 100%, this is where the high would be. And you can see that we didn't make it to 100%, but that would be the range. And price can often turn at that spot, because it's an average, and so on average price goes an average amount every day. And so this is kind of a good gauge for whether the price action is pushing much harder and can crash through and retest and keep going, or whether it's going to peter out around that level. And it gets more accurate as the day goes on, only because there's more range as the day goes on, so you can see these kind of building in as it pushes it higher and lower. Opening range works kind of the same way for the first half hour. If you pick a half an hour, it'll push it higher and lower, but then after that half hour is done, it stops. And this just will keep going as long as the tops, the highs and lows are pushed. This will get redefined throughout the day. So generally, you don't necessarily have to mess with the plots themselves. They're set up to have defaults, but you can always change them like everything else. Some of them are going to be confusing, like today's open, and then we have a today's open high and low, and that's because I wanted to have compound lines for some of the more important ones. So there's a high and low. There's one that's offset by a penny above and below, so the line itself stands out a little bit more. But you can change all of this, and you can hide or show. If you don't like it, you can just uncheck show plot, and then it goes away. So opening range, high, low. I have the bubble, that's the price bubble, so you can see where those are getting plotted out. Most of them I have turned off because I don't necessarily want to know where they are, and if I do, I can always look at the label or at the bubble. And you can see, like most of my recent studies, the plots colors are set down in globals, so you can go down here and change these to be whatever. And the reason I do it this way is so that there's a good default set, so it's not the terrible default colors that Thinkorswim uses. This is more internally self-consistent. So opening range, high and low are going to be the same color. All the fibs will be the same color. Everything, all the 50% fibs will be the same color. But within that, you can pop into here and make these colors whatever you want. You can change the transparency of it if you don't like it so bright. You can, just whatever. If you like better colors than these, you can change them all in here. And if you do change something, make sure you hit save as default, so the next time you add this study, it'll pull all those defaults in from everything that you've made here. So I'm pretty sure that's all of it. There's a lot of changes here, a lot of streamlining, a lot of bug fixes. There were some things that were just showing up wrong in like some of the names and the values weren't showing up right, so the colors were wrong. This is a little more optimized. It should render a little faster because of the way that I was calculating things before. So there are definitely some good bug fixes and optimizations in here. But also there are some fancy things like these bubbles and alerts, so that you can have a better idea of what these levels actually are when you're looking at them. It may not be obvious, and you can always turn them off once you get to a point where you kind of have a sense of it, like the dots are the opening range, and so that you can turn those, turn the labels off once you get what each one of these things are, once you have the colors set up for the way you want to use it. But it's handy to have everything right, and you can change the offset to push this stuff further out if you want to. So anyway, that's the new version of highs and lows. Fairly big update. So if you if yours doesn't look like this, then head to the Google Doc. I'll put it in the comments, a link to the section of the Google Doc that has this in it, and then download the latest, because I use this every day, and it's I find it to be pretty handy. It's all of these levels get pretty well respected. So let me know if you like it and use it, or if you have any changes, suggestions. I'm totally open to changing things based on your suggestions, because you guys are using it too. So yeah, let me know. Thanks.